You're listening to Overwatch Contenders Daily, your path to daily news, scores, and insights into the Overwatch League stars of tomorrow. Here's your host, LemonKiwi.
Hey Overwatch fans, happy Thursday. Welcome to Overwatch Contenders Daily. I'm your host, LemonKiwi. Today's guest comes all the way from Contenders Australia. His name is Jordan Mays. You know him as Elfishguy, caster for Contenders Australia, which just covered their playoffs this past weekend, wrapping up the grand finals. Congratulations to Sydney Drop Bears. Going to be asking Jordan all about the playoffs, so remembering and reminiscing what happened a few days ago. The best matches, talking about Colourhex and the Sydney Drop Bears. Will they still be untouchable without their star player? Also going over some rumors of maybe Blank Esports from the Pacific region coming over to Contenders Australia and how that might rattle the cage over in that region. So excited to talk to Jordan. Let's get right into my interview with Elfishguy. And I'm joined here with Jordan Elfishguy Mays. He's the commentator over in Contenders Australia, where you guys got to catch the playoffs that just wrapped up this past weekend. I know the video's a bit late, but I've been so excited to hear from one of these amazing commentators to know about all this action going on. So Jordan, how are you doing? How'd you feel over the weekend?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I felt great over the weekend. Right now, I'm not feeling so great because pretty much everyone that's come back from Melbourne Esports Open has got the MEO plague, as we've started to call it. So everyone's a little bit sick, but aside from that, everything was great. I think it was pretty cool to have a big Overwatch event in Australia for the first time. Technically it was the second time because we had the World Cup stop, but this was the first one for our domestic team, so that was
really cool to hear that you guys got this big LAN event. I think the only region that doesn't have a LAN event is South America at this point. And you guys sponsored by Macca's. Macca's.
It was a good try.
I practiced before the recording. So.
I think Pacific doesn't have a LAN final this season, or maybe it's just the top team. I'm not so sure. Because I was talking to Avril and Pixie about that, who were obviously also at the event. But yeah, that Macca's sponsorship, that's cool. Unfortunately, I didn't get any free Macca's out of it, so that's a disappointment.
Some fries over.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not.
So, from the quarterfinal matches, I guess we'll start at the beginning of playoffs. I thought one of the more exciting first matches would have been Order, so the former Blank Blue, versus Masterminds, two really big names to the Australian scene, both teams that are not new to playoffs whatsoever, almost a repeat of the semifinals from last season, minus some roster changes probably. But were you surprised that Order took it 3-0 there, or shouldn't have been closer?
Well, look, in the end, to be honest, I actually am not hugely surprised. I think I predicted maybe a 3-1 for Order at the time, but it was always going to be a fairly one-sided affair, I think most people thought. The reason I think maybe that people would have seen that match and gone, oh, this is going to be a really, really good one, is because obviously Masterminds of Season 1, they made it through the finals and everything, but this season, Masterminds had their roster completely gutted, so I think it was only one player that came through from the original Season 1 Masterminds into the Season 2 Masterminds roster. So it's more or less a completely different team, whereas Order obviously still have the majority of their roster, ATAR being the only change for them. So, Masterminds was kind of a new team, and they were, I wouldn't say struggling during the season, but they probably weren't hitting the same peak that the Season 1 Masterminds roster had been. So not entirely surprising of a result. I think the most surprising result for most people was the fact that Serenity was actually able to get a map off Sydney Drop Bears, and one of the two teams that was able to do it the entire season.
I was surprised that I was about to say, Sydney Drop Bears, they're untouchable. And they lost a map here or there, which is kind of surprising. So Serenity is not a team that you thought would do that?
I wouldn't say... Yeah, no, I didn't think that they would do that, to be honest. I thought that it would be a 3-0. I mean, it sounds harsh, right? But... Sydney Drop Bears are just so far ahead of everyone else that you expected them in that match in particular to get the undefeated run. That being said, I think Serenity has been kind of undersold a little bit in terms of where they ended up placing compared to where they probably could have placed. It would have been interesting to see them in Group A, for example, because our Group A looked quite a lot weaker in the end than the Group B did. So Serenity being, I think they were 4th in Group B. Had they ended up being playing in Group A, I think they probably would have ended up in third place quite comfortably. So that could have really changed how like playoffs ended up, and potentially whether or not, for example, Kanga might have gone through to the season finals as opposed to Serenity or whatever. That would have been a very, very interesting one, because Serenity versus Kanga was a 2-3 the regular season. So there was a little bit going on there. But I definitely think that Serenity roster did well in the playoffs, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're going to go next season if they are able to stay together throughout this break period.
The roster mania going on with everyone getting poached and extracted and all this craziness, which we'll get to later on. But at least score-wise, one of the closer matches seemed to be Order when they went into the semifinal versus Darksided. And what was it, a 3-2 or something like that? And it was watched over the match again. There was some really cool comps going on, especially with the playoffs, patch 1.26. You have Hammond, Symmetra. I think you had Hammond from Mooney. God brought out the Hammond too, and we even saw some Bastion Symmetra stuff going on with Order. So what did you think of the strats in that match, or the match overall?
Yeah, I mean, not only just the strats, but like the clutch plays as well and that kind of thing. It was probably, I think, the best game of Overwatch that we've had in the Australian region, at least since I've been casting. I've been doing Season 1 and Season 2 of Contenders. There's been a few people that have been around a lot longer than I have. But from memory, that's one of the best games that I've ever watched from our region. So very, very exciting. Yeah, I mean, the strategies, like, no one really expected anything like that. So I think that a lot of that comes from the big brain of RQT, who was obviously coaching Order at that event and throughout this season. And I mean, interesting to talk about the Hammond play. Obviously new to pretty much all regions of Overwatch, but when we were talking to a lot of the teams before the event started, two of them, so we talked to every single team, and two of them said they think Hammond is garbage and no one should use them.
People think that.
The other two said that they thought he was great. He was probably even a better pick than Winston for what role he provides. And I was like very interested because of that disparity. And my opinion hasn't necessarily been made up either. I play a lot of Hammond myself. And I mean, maybe I'm not the greatest barometer for how good the hero is. But I think a lot of the time when I'm playing Hammond, I'm thinking, well, maybe I should just be playing Winston here. I think maybe he'd be performing this role a little bit better. But we saw a lot of it actually in the season finals, and I was kind of surprised that much of Hammond, to be honest.
There was a lot of it in all regions, and depending on what you pair it with, seems to be that he's playing almost that main tank, that Winston role along with the D.Va most of the time. Although I've seen some Winston Hammond, I've seen solo tank Hammond, I've seen quad tank Hammond, and it was actually interesting to see Australia kind of running it actually on both sides. So Gob and Mooney bringing that out, and Bastion Symmetra, I haven't seen that since, well, Contenders Europe. I think they brought that in their playoffs. It was really insane. And talking about, well, maybe less insane, the grand final, 4-1, Sydney Drop Bears take another championship. And I don't think there's much to say unless you want to comment on it, but why is Drop Bears so good in your region? How are they so untouchable?
Yeah, no surprises there that Drop Bears are able to take another win. I thought for a moment maybe Darksided might be able to challenge them, especially after seeing how Lijiang Tower did go and Darksided being 1-0 up. And I think to an extent, Darksided did manage to challenge okay. Like they had a fairly competitive series despite the fact that it was 4-1, but Sydney Drop Bears were better. And I think a big reason for that is that across all the roles, the Sydney Drop Bears do have pretty much some of, if not the best player in their respective region. I think most people at this point are going to agree that Quats and Shoyu are up there as far as the top two tanks in the region. You could probably throw Punk in the mix there as well for the off-tank role. As far as DPS, it's by and large everyone's saying Colourhex and Jordation are number one, number two, or the best package deal, the best duo. And the same can be said for the supports, both of whom are in the Australian World Cup squad. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Cuss has taken away Bertlog's position, but Bertlog is still in there quite a bit as well. So not only the fact that they have all those individuals, but also the fact that they've got, I think, better preparation, better backing than most of the teams in the region. I'm not so sure how much you or many of the international viewers would know about the Drop Bears organization, but it's quite a large organization in terms of they've been backed by some investors, and the investors also are owning the Direwolves League of Legends team, which won on the Sunday at Melbourne Esports Open. So basically, they have the best League of Legends team in the region, and they also have now the best Overwatch in the region. So I don't know what the reason for the best talent scouts in the region, or do they have the best facilities, which, by the way, they do, because I've been there, and they have a very, very good facility. So I think that has part of the reason to it. And it's kind of just the whole package deal. They have the best players, they have the best org, they have the operation, and they had the best boot camp as well coming to the season finals as well. And that was the same case for last year. So they've kind of just got everything going for them at the moment.
Well, when you got I don't know if they have a house going on, but when you can provide the best salaries, the best resources, it's obvious you're going to sign the best players. They're kind of teaching me some fun stuff about League of Legends, although I don't follow it too much. I had to just find out this season what a drop bear was, because the logo's an angry koala, and I had to have some Australians explain to me the whole drop bears thing. But
yeah.
It's a continuously dominant team in your region. But what kind of sucks is now that they lost, well, fortunate news for the region, unfortunate news for that team, they lost Colourhex to NA Contenders team Toronto Esports. People have been speculating maybe he's going to the Boston Uprising, especially with mistakes leaving the team. So for maybe those at home that don't know Colourhex well, what does he bring to a team? Obviously, he's pivotal to the Drop Bears.
Yeah, he's certainly a very fantastic player, isn't he? I mean, this is a guy that's gone undefeated in Season 1 in terms of the regular stages. He didn't drop a single map when he was playing on Masterminds. In the league play, they did end up losing in the finals, but league play, he's undefeated. He didn't drop a map here in Season 2 either, so he has a perfect record in AU Contenders throughout the regular play. And yeah, I mean, as far as what he brings to the team, like, I can't necessarily speak so much for what he brings game as far as like in-game leading or comms or anything like that. I'm not familiar with how Sydney Drop Bears play. I've never sat in on any of their scrims or anything like that. But if you just look at him as a player, you know, you can see that immense skill that he brings across the table. And not only that, but the hero pool that he does possess as well is pretty phenomenal. He's got Widowmaker. He's considered probably one of, if not the best Widowmakers in the region. He's got Farah, again, one of, if not the best Farah. His Genji is strong as well, and we've seen him float around on a couple of other picks, but those are the three big ones, and they kind of work really well with Jordan, who he likes to play the Hanzo, he likes to play the Tracer, these kinds of things. He likes to play Soldier, so the two work really, really well as a pairing, and it most definitely was an upgrade coming through from Billa from the last season for Drop Bears. It wasn't necessarily that Billa was a poor player, but it was like you just have Colourhex, and he was the ideal fit for that next duo slot for the Sydney Drop Bears, and I'm very excited to see how he's going to go overseas if he ends up playing on Toronto Esports or beyond. I would love to see another Australian player in the Overwatch League, because right now we've got one team to cheer for, and that's LA Valiant. So another one would be great.
His hero pool, I think, is something to look at. Like you mentioned, the Farah, we're gonna mess that up. But not only that, he plays in a really good Sombra, and he portrays that with Jordation and what's the other one? Doomfist. I've seen him pull that out in playoffs. It's like, what can this guy not play? And I'm sure he was picked up probably because he's a really nice guy. I'll have to interview him and see if he's cool too. But I'm very surprised to see that they imported someone all the way from Australia to a contenders team. But I would maybe think that he's going to the Boston Uprising, especially if they lost their main Widowmaker, and this guy's a good Widowmaker. So do you think that Billa's now going to take his place, or are they looking for different players, or what do you think's going to happen?
I can't really say 100% what's going to happen. I don't think Billa is going to come back. I'm not so sure how much Overwatch he has been playing lately. I think I think he's retired. I don't know though. Like, I'm not sitting in the Sydney Drop Bears Discord and figuring out exactly what they're doing. From what I've heard on the grapevine, they are looking obviously for another DPS player. There are quite a few DPS players and quite a lot of players just in general in the Australian region right now that are looking at teams and trying to figure out what their best options are, because we have that break between Season 2 of Contenders and Season 3. I know the majority of the Kanga roster has put out LFTs on Twitter. So quite a few of the dark-sided players. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, pretty much everyone except Sydney Drop Bears, right? Because they don't want to change. I don't think orders made, or at least I'm not seeing any changes being made or any LFT posts or anything like that. So maybe they're going to be untouched coming through into Season 3 as well. But yeah, there's quite a lot of openings. I mean, there's quite a lot of very good DPS players in our region, and a lot of them from teams that didn't necessarily perform quite so well in this season contender. So, you know, you're looking at teams like that sat down in the 5th and 6th position in their group, but they had some pretty amazing DPS players, and I think one of those might not be particularly surprising to see pushed up into one of those top 4 teams.
Well, I'm excited to see how the Drop Bears are going to turn out next season without one of their star players. If Billa's going to come out of retirement, which seems maybe unlikely if you retire, but who they might pick up from the other playoff teams, or what kind of mess roster mania we're going to see for the upcoming season. But at least we can possibly cheer on Colourhex for the Overwatch League. Not confirmed yet, but we are going to hope that he goes to the Boston Uprising. But from maybe other players in the Australian region, is there any other players you think could be picked up or tried out for the Overwatch League?
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, you spoke to Punk, and I think he's probably the one that everyone has got their eyes on at the moment. Even after that match that Darkseid had played against Sydney Drop Bears, everyone was saying, Punk, this kid needs to be picked up. He's 16, he's a prodigy, he's gone absolutely ballistic on the Diva, and I think he's got a very bright future ahead of him. Now, I don't necessarily know if right now is the right time for him. I mean, being 16 years old, and
I'll have to wait a
obviously there's quite a lot of waiting to be done there. But if you're that good and you're that young, in 2 years, in 3 years, when you've really refined your skills and you've had that experience under your belt, like you consider he's one of the few players now in Overwatch that have played on in Australia, I should say, that have played on a massive stage like that. And he's only going to get more opportunities like that. I think that's going to be a really, really exciting prospect to keep an eye on throughout however many seasons of Australia Contenders we do get. And the other one, I think everyone knows that I'm a big fan of Yuki. So I think he's a really versatile DPS player. And he's also on the World Cup team. If anyone wasn't familiar with him, he's come through from TF2 and was one of, if not the best player in his time in TF2 in the Australian region. And he's come through and he's again performing at a very, very high level here in Overwatch. So I'd be pretty keen to see how he would do moving on further than AU Contenders.
Well, you named it off tank. You got a DPS down. So is there now a support that we would throw in there?
I mean, Burtlog and a Kraken are the two that obviously you would look at straight away. I mean, I think a Kraken had a phenomenal series against Darksided on Zenyatta in particular. So yeah, I think I'd probably say a Kraken at this point would be for me. But as far as the support players, I'm not necessarily the kind of person that always notices what is happening from the support perspective, which I think is fairly standard across the board for most people, because you don't look at a support, you don't get that wow factor necessarily off a Mercy. You kind of only notice their mistakes. So I think if I had to make my ideal AU super team, which I guess is like the World Cup team, right? But if I had to do that, I would have to sort of sit down and specifically watch the supports more so than I do when I'm casting, because when I'm casting, I'm just looking at what exciting thing is happening that I can yell and scream about. And 9 times out of 10, that's not always the support players, unfortunately. They don't get enough love, at least from me.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate that I don't notice anything going on except when his Zenyatta starts fragging out, and then there's
exactly. or Frogger, right? When he's on Lucio.
Oh yeah, well, there's some cool boops going on with Lucio sometimes on certain maps. But now for the future of the region, I guess. There's some rumors floating around that Blank Esports from Pacific Contenders might move over to Contenders Australia. So if that were to be the case, where would you rank them in the Australian region talent?
Yeah, I've heard the rumors as well. I haven't really been confirmed anything, so I've got no idea. I would really, really like to see them in the AU Contenders, because I think that would add another element, and it would add another really strong team to the region. As far as where they would sit compared to the other teams, I've been hearing that based on scrims, they are still a little bit stronger than everyone else in the region, even comparing Drop Bears. But then again, scrim results, and it's also not from the horse's mouth, so I could just be talking absolute rubbish right now. I would say that they'd at least be they would most certainly be in the top 4. There's no way that they're outside the top 4. They'd probably still be the best in the region, just based on what I've been so far. So that would be quite interesting to see, because obviously Sydney Drop Bears have kind of built this dynasty that we've been talking about on the broadcast. They've won 2 seasons in a row, and if the big brothers come back from overseas, come back from Pacific and start to play in the AU region again, that could be another hurdle for them. And if they were able to go 3 in a row, and if I'm so used to saying Blank
something.
Blue. If Blank, the original roster, was back in Contenders Season 3 and Sydney Drop Bears won that, and just be that would be pretty amazing. That would be really solidifying them, most definitely.
Looks like a new challenger approaches, as the Smash game says, and so excited to see another top team, and that actually, you think, might give some competition to Sydney Drop Bears. So I'm so excited to see the upcoming season for Contenders Australia. So thank you so much, Jordan. I almost called you Jordation, Jordan, for coming on.
You're welcome, and I'm sure Jordation would be very pleased to be likened to myself.
I'll have to bring him on for an interview and call him Elfishguy.
Yeah. I'm not so sure if he'd be that pleased, to be honest, but that's all right.
Never mind. We won't bring him on then. But thanks so much for coming on, Jordan. This was Overwatch Contenders Daily. We're going to see you guys next week.